Hello, neighbor. Today, we're going to be starting a new series. We're calling it Digging Deep, where we're going to be taking a look at individual weapons, deciding what they can and cannot do, talking about them in general, deciding if they're good or not. It's a little bit more than that, though. We're going to talk about shots to kill, recoil, availability, where can you find these, how many of these are even on the map, all sorts of things today. This is not like my other videos where we're ranking the weapon. We're just talking explicitly about this gun. This is going to be episode 1. If you'd like to see episodes coming in the future, hey, maybe do a like, comment, and subscribe. Helps the channel. If you'd like to support me in other ways and the quality of the content that I put on this channel, you can do so at patreon.com/BillyJamesD. You don't need to donate $1 million. That would be crazy. I would be forced to accept it on principle. Because then I could retire probably, but we don't want to do that today. For as little as $1, you can make a huge difference in what we can and can't do here. Anything would be appreciated, but I do expect nothing. Just thanks for being here. Today's guest and subject of conversation is the tall, dark, and handsome 5.56 spitting M16. Mr. M16A2, what have you got for us? You got anything to say today? Absolutely astounding, superb, truly. Not very helpful though. Thankfully, we've got stats.
We are interrupting your scheduled broadcast to tell you that all statistics in this video are provided by Wobo Tools. A link on screen and a link in the description below. All credit to Wobo Tools for statistics. And now, back to your regular scheduled programming.
Let's get some basic stuff out of the way. We are going to look at shots to kill, and for that we're going to pull up a graph. This graph will display health damage versus a plate carrier. The scenario we are going to be examining is chest shots, and we're going to look at ranges. So what can we see? Right now we're looking at the maximum optimal range for shots to kill with the M16. So your maximum range that you should be shooting this gun at is 200 meters. Why? Because this is where it will retain its 4 shots to kill. The least amount of shots required to kill with this weapon is 4 if we're looking at chest shots. The reason we're looking at chest shots is because this is a measurable scenario. We do this quite often. We can talk about headshots later, but we're going to talk about chest shots as this is what is most common. So if you go any farther than 200 meters, this gun will lose its ability to 4-shot kill, but anywhere from 0 to 200 is a 4-shot kill. With 5.56, this is quite good. This is actually identical to the AUG AX's damage drop-off curve. So in that sense, these weapons are fairly comparable. You can see he's made himself quite comfortable over there. Anyway, that's not where the comparisons end. The M16, the AUR-AX, and the LaMas are amongst the highest projectile speeds in the game for assault rifles. These are the assault rifles with the most bullet velocity. 850 meters per second is very, very fast. To give you an idea of how fast that is faster than the Mosin by a fair amount. So in a nutshell, each of these guns, the M16 including, would be easier for you to track targets on a horizontal plane with, because the projectile speed means you don't have to lead your targets as much. And this brings us to an interesting point. The M16 has nearly S-tier stats. So why is it not quite there? What is it that's holding it back a little bit? So this is tied with the hardest hitting assault rifle in the game as far as health and shock damage go. This and the AUR-AX share the exact same health and shock damage numbers. The AUR-X is just a little better at utilizing it. So the problem with the M16 is that it has a damage profile that supports a range of out to 200 meters, but it only has iron sights. And while I personally like the iron sights, using those iron sights beyond 100 meters, maybe even a little bit below that, is going to result in relatively subpar accuracy. 200 meters is actually decently far in this game. If you've never taken the time to measure this out and see what that looks like, go get yourself a rangefinder, pick a tree in an open field, make yourself distance to it so that it is 200 meters, aim down iron sights with a gun, and imagine that that tree is now moving, and you're firing in semi-automatic, because that's what's going to be best for this range. It would be silly to burst fire the M16 at that range, because maybe all but your first shot is probably going to miss. If you haven't done that, if you've not tried shooting someone while they're moving at 200 meters with a semi-auto gun and iron sights, it's just not as efficient as a gun that has a magnified optic. So if we're talking about using this gun at longer ranges, it gets beat out by your S tier options like the M4 and the AUR-AX. They're just simply better at it. Now the stats are on par. It is capable at those ranges, but it's going to be much harder for the user to get the maximum potential out of this gun at those further ranges. I think the M16 is kind of a specialist's weapon, where if a player has enough time with it, it might be enough to offset the skill that is needed there. So if I see a player running this intentionally when they have other options, respect. It feels like a stylish choice, and it tells me about you as a player, what you do and do not need. But that's going to pretty much cover it for longer ranges, and that is one of those factors that kind of holds it out of the S tier guns. However, I do consider this to be the top of the A tier guns as far as assault rifle goes. I do have a video on that. You can go watch it if you'd like, and I talk about the M16 there as well. So CQB, I say CQB a lot, close quarters battle. I know it's CQC, close quarters combat. That's just a callback from a lot of the old games that I used to play, and it was terminology used amongst friends. So don't worry about it. Sometimes I say CQB, sometimes I say CQC. We're talking about the same thing. It's quite good at that as well. So damage per second, 985.14. This is really high. But we have to remember, optimally in close quarters, you're using the burst fire mode. And if you didn't know, it's a 3-round burst. And we know that this is a 4 rounds to kill in a close quarters scenario. Okie dokie. Now, you could luck out and say 2 chest, 1 head on a single burst, but the odds are not in your favor for that to happen. It certainly does happen, but we don't want to rely on variables like that. We're talking about chest shots here, because that gives you a good scope of, this gun versus that gun. So the problem with the M16's 3-round burst is that it slows its rate of fire down by quite a lot. There are gaps between the 3 rounds where weapons like the M4, weapons like the Lamas, weapons like the AUR-AX, if they were fighting an opponent in a perfect scenario, which is they meet each other in a room 50 meters apart, everyone is shooting at the exact same time, and we're talking about plate carrier targets, the gaps between the shots fired of the M16's burst would end up getting the M16 user killed, because the M4 would complete its 4 rounds to the chest before the next burst started from the M16. It's just enough a gap in time that it's going to allow those more established S tier guns to kill that player. Now, these guns this is really good gun balance, because these guns are all fairly usable. Even the worst guns in the game stand a chance against the best guns in the game, but if we have to be technical and say this is better than that, these are those hyper circumstantial situations that we have to examine. So yeah, the AUR-AX would kill before the second burst was initiated out of the M16. So would the M4, and the Lamas would kill well before that. So it has a little bit of an issue in CQC as well. Another variable we need to consider about the M16's 3-round burst is that it's not like in other games where you tap the trigger and 3 rounds come out. The M16 functions more like its real-life counterpart, where the burst fire functionality works on a trigger pull and that trigger pull being held. So the only way you're getting consistent 3-round bursts out of it is to pull the trigger and hold the trigger. If you're tapping the trigger with the M16A2, some of your bursts are 1 round, 2 rounds, maybe 3 rounds. And because of that variable, and a lot of people's discipline is to tap on 3-round burst, because that's what all of our other shooter games do, you can make mistakes, and you're going to have to do multiple burst trigger pulls to get those 4 shots out, and this could cause you to die. Even though you think you're shooting 3 rounds at a time, you're not. Sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's 2, depending on the length of the trigger pull. So you have to get past that muscle memory of tapping your trigger. You have to hold it down for the burst. And this was a comment from one of my last videos, and I went digging to look for it, and I couldn't find it. But I believe it's from one of my commenters. That is, he engages a lot with just about every single video, and I can't find it. But it was a very good point to point out, because not a lot of people even know that about the M16 in this game. It does require you to hold the trigger down for the burst, and that's true for all burst guns in this game. Hey, who let these guys in here? Look, M4, AUG, I told you. We're talking about the M16 today. You guys aren't invited. We'll do an episode later where we can look at you guys individually, but you're not supposed to be here. I'm really sorry about that, everyone. Sometimes the other weapons get jealous and they just appear. So how common is the M16? Well, right here we have an exscript from the types.xml file. The types file is kind of a file that determines the base conditions for how many weapons are on a map, all of the items, how often do they appear, and where do they appear at. They don't determine every condition about the weapon in the game, but this is a file that handles a large majority of that. So, nominal number. This is how many the game is trying to have on the map at any given time, which this number is higher than I thought it was. This game is trying to put 4 of these on the map at any given time, which is interesting. At my server, we have this gun as more rare. I believe there's only 1 at a time. But the vanilla values are 4 and at a minimum 2. We can also see that this weapon is not counted in hoarder, which would be barrels, crates, tents, vehicles, things like that. So the game is not accounting for those that players already have, which means that this weapon will always be available on the map. It is in fact always there, whether you can find it or not, it is there. And also it is tagged with the dynamic event loot tag, as well as weapons and military. So without that D-loot tag, this weapon would spawn at any tier military location, but it does not because of that loot tag. So where do these spawn at? So you can find yourself an M16 at military dynamic events. That's going to include things like helicopter crash sites, military convoys, and the military train crashes. And I know what you're thinking. You're looking at this map going, gee whiz, that's a lot of different dynamic event points, but remember, there's only a certain amount of these that spawn at a time. So in general, if I was going to set out to go look for an M16, I would pick somewhere in the west where there are a lot of convoys. Convoys seem to be much more reliable than helicopters for guns. I don't know why that is, but that's been my experience. So I would go out, find myself, let's say 3 or 4 points, and put myself somewhere central to those 4 points and just loop around for a day or two. Odds are you're going to find multiple different guns, and hopefully one of them is one of the guns you're looking for, but you're going to find some of the best guns in the game just doing that. It's really not as hard as some people make it out to be. And you guys already know how I feel about rarity of guns. Well, the best guns in this game are the rarest guns in this game. So don't discredit something just because it's hard to find, quote unquote. Again, I don't think these guns are too hard to find. You just have to go do the legwork, and heaven forbid, now you have something to do. So I enjoy this system. But yeah, I will say though, as a note, the convoys do seem to be more reliable. Thank you all for joining me today, and Mr. M16, thank you for being here. Hey, if you guys would like me to do another gun after this one, you have a particular one that you'd like me to take a closer look at, do one of these deep dives, one of these digging deep episodes, let me know in the comments down below. I also want to take this time to point out that I have a community server. That community server is called Official Premium on PlayStation. You can search it in the community tabs. It is spelled out in all capital letters, Official Premium. Search it, go play it. I've got big plans for this server in the future. Right now we are a vanilla style server, except we've made some of the hardest, I'm saying this backwards, some of the best guns in the game much harder to acquire, but we've done so in a fun way. We have a little bit of a quest line going that has you going from Pavlovo to get a set of keys, and then, or I'm sorry, Riffy to get a set of keys, and then Pavlovo to get a briefcase, and then from the briefcase you can get access to a bunker. We've made some of the high tier military locations surrounded with zombie hordes, so tier 4 locations are a bit more of a challenge. We have build anywhere. We have unlimited stamina for dynamic gunfights and convenience for people that know the map and just wish to sprint point to point. It's a lot of fun. We've got a growing Discord of about 50 players, and we're looking to grow the pop. I've got big plans for us in the future. More than anything, I appreciate you guys all being here today. Do a like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more content like this in the future. I will see you all next video.